special webinar brought to you by the OnSide Talent Academy. My name's Vic and I'm a TV and radio presenter.
Hello, I'm Dev. You can usually find me on BBC Radio 1.
You know what? Youth workers are doing amazing work at the moment. They're connecting with young people via social media and via other digital platforms in these new circumstances. And this webinar is here to help you build on and hopefully develop further what you're already doing so well.
Yeah, so here's how it's going to work. Over the next hour, we're going to be talking to people who have been there, they've done it. They're industry experts and they'll offer some advice. They'll have lots of great ideas on how to create content that allows you to continue to build those really important relationships that you have with young people. So here's what we've got coming up. Firstly, engaging with young people online. Now, we know Youth Zones have amazing facilities supporting you and help you deliver some world-class sessions. And you've also proved that it's still possible to support young people online. We're going to be talking to Leon Crosby, who's Head of Operations at Blackburn Youth Zone, and he's going to talk us through the key things to help you engage with young people online.
And then we're going to be looking at safeguarding in a digital setting. And on hand to tell us everything we need to know is OnSide's Safeguarding Manager, Lynn Byrne.
Next, we're going to be getting all technical in technical equipment and content ideas. It might be that all you have in terms of equipment is just a smartphone or a laptop with a built-in webcam. That's absolutely fine. We're going to be joined by Ruth A.J. Wilson, who can show you how to work with what you have. She's directed and produced TV, adverts, she's made content with YouTubers like Zoella. We're also going to hear from Callum Knight, who's the founder of BU Creations in Manchester, whose expertise in creating brilliant digital content. He's going to be sharing some ideas for creating exciting online sessions for young people.
And then finally, we're going to consider producing and presenting. And hey, Dev, the experts in that section are going to be us.
Finally classed as an expert in something. No, we produce and present all the time, every show we do, every time we take to the stage to do a show. Shout out to the OnSide Wards at the Royal Albert Hall. We always work as hard as we can to produce and present as best as we can and in the right way.
Exactly. So we're going to be sharing some of our industry secrets, can we call them that, with you then. At the end of each section, there'll be a live Q&A with the experts. So please send us your questions, send them all the way through each section. Just remember to tell us your name and your youth zone.
Right, there's a lot to get through and a lot to learn. So let's get cracking.
It is great to be here right now with Leon from the Blackburn Youth Zone. Hello, Leon. How are you doing?
How are you doing? I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Excited to have you on screen.
Thank you. Cheers.
Now, when it comes to engaging positively with young people online, what are some things that should be considered?
Well, there's three core things really to consider. There's you as a youth worker and you being visible and having a positive presence online, but also helping young people to feel visible and to feel valued. And one of the joys of youth work is connecting young people, and it's your role to facilitate peer interaction between young people. And what you normally find is within those interactions that young people find out more about themselves, about each other, and about the world that we live in.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about what you mean by you being visible.
So, young people have formed incredible relationships with you as a youth worker. And for many young people, you are a role model. So it's important that they hear and see you online. For many young people, you might also be the only positive, constant person in their life. So it's important that you fulfill these roles when you're doing online youth work. So this means, well, in order to be a constant feature in a young person's life, you have to be committed to providing constant posts and engaging young people online. But also youth work is about wearing different hats. And a young person will normally give you what hat you need to wear, the sense of what you need to do. One of those hats might be to bring that energy, to bring that bounce, to bring that feel, to bring atmosphere. The other hat might be to support young people and to sympathise and understand what struggles they're going through. The other hat might be to instill some boundaries and help young people understand that life's a game of choices. And ultimately, you are a role model, and young people are watching you for a reason.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about number two, though, the second thing you mentioned, which was making the young person feel visible and valued?
Well, no one really wants to feel invisible, and especially young people. So it's important that you remind young people that they're an active and valued member of their community. And how you do this is by simple and basic things, those kind interactions, general conversations and touching base, and understanding young people as individuals. And they all are different. So, for example, this is Joe, he's 16. These are his interests, this is his likes, this is dislikes, and this is what he wants to achieve. And as youth workers, we have to understand that. Online, these same interactions are just as important, and it's crucial that your online content gives you the opportunity to do these things. Examples of this is reading and acknowledging young people's comments, inviting young people to scheduled content that you know that interests them, general touching base and DMing young people through the official Youth Zone accounts, but also staying true to those core youth work values, which is about providing young people positive experiences that have positive outcomes. And what you normally find is that young people go on a journey when they participate within the project, and throughout that journey there's personal development. At the end, there's a positive outcome and reward.
So how can youth workers make content that you feel enables these things to happen?
You have to design content that resonates with young people, and a big part of that is about foreseeing the different needs between young people and ensuring that as soon as a young person lands on your website, your social media page, they can connect with something's theirs that interests them. How you do this is by building a broad content menu which might explore different themes. These things might be sports and activity, learning and development, creative arts, music, performing arts, the social outcomes, but also understand that we work with different young people. Again, some of these young people might be extremely vulnerable. Some of these young people might be on the peripheries of being extremely vulnerable, but also some young people come from supportive backgrounds and are extremely aspirational, and you have to understand these different needs. Ultimately, it's about using your online content as a vehicle to answer their questions and to hear those questions, to highlight what they want to talk about, and to help them understand that they are valued.
It does feel like we've had our attention drawn recently to just how many platforms there are to do this, and it can be a bit overwhelming. There's a lot out there. So what platforms do you think might work best for content that makes young people feel visible and valued?
So you want to get a platform that young people want to engage with, but also provides that two-way mediums such as Zoom, Gloop and Instagram Live. And what these platforms do is they build a stronger sense of connectivity where peers can connect with each other with the support of a youth worker.
Well, let's chat about, I think it was point number 3 that you made at the beginning, your role as a youth worker in facilitating peer interaction between young people.
Yeah. So this is why a youth worker does what they do. It's connecting young people, and it's important that you provide them a space where they can still connect with their peers. And your role as a youth worker here is to facilitate those positive interactions, setting interesting topics and debates, but also bringing in that energy and that entertainment and providing recreational activities. But again, staying true to the point of connecting young people and providing that space.
And what is the more specific role of the youth worker themselves in a peer interaction context?
So I know Lynn's going to explore this later on, but this is a key time for a youth worker to monitor and to safeguard young people. One of these things is ensuring that every young person and your peers and the youth workers are respected throughout, but also instilling firm boundaries and helping young people understand the do's and don'ts, and when boundaries get blurred, providing positive intervention. It's also being a safe presence. When young people see you online, they should feel safe because you're there. It's also about flagging negative behaviours and being mindful of young people's comments which might suggest concern, but also assess the mannerisms, the moods, the lows and the highs, and their appearance. And any concerns that you do have about a particular young person, take those concerns away from the public forum and support young people on an individual basis.
Leon, thank you so much for joining us this session. Some really brilliant answers. Let's now take some questions.
Hey, Leon. What is the best way to make young people valued as individuals when accessing online content?
It's important to understand that every young person is different and to try and reach out to individuals and understand exactly what they want from the online content. And as I explained before, it's about building that broad content menu so a young person can connect with different things. By doing that, it helps them feel valued because something's there that interests them.
And what do you do when peer interactions turn maybe negative online?
I guess it's the same principles as when you're normally operating a youth zone. Sometimes young people might present difficulties with each other. So it's about providing positive intervention, but reminding young people of those boundaries. Always give young people a second chance and help them understand actually what they've done and potentially why that's wrong.
I've got another question in here. What are some of the best platforms to get young people interacting with each other as well as their youth worker?
I guess you've got to use platforms that that are safe, but also that young people will use. So Zoom is a really good platform. It's safe. There's a process where young people are invited by email, and obviously you can control, so the youth worker control who's accepted and who to deny. And young people there can engage with each other just as we are now. They've got the webcam. Obviously, they can ask private chats through the text chats, or they can speak on the public forum.
I like this question because I feel like it's useful for all of us. What are really good times to post to get young people to see your posts?
We have to understand that young people are still doing their studies. So 9 till potentially 3:30, they're still occupied. And just like with the youth zone, you'll normally find that 4 till 6 is more targeted. And then actually it's in full capacity at 7 o'clock. And there is some data being released. And around 7 till 9 o'clock, we find our most engagement.
What has been the best online content so far for getting young people to engage and interact?
They all have different things. So live streams build that mass participation where young people come and engage with each other. The Zoom calls is a bit more personal, so young people connect with each other. So they all offer different things, so it's really hard to say what one thing is good. But as I said before, it's about using all the platforms to reach out to young people in different ways.
Leon, I've been to one of the youth zones, and what struck me was the energy, and that takes me nicely to this next question, which is how can we create the youth zone energy and atmosphere from your living room?
Ooh.
How do you do it?
Youth workers, they know young people. And I explained it in the video, it's about wearing hats. And you guys will know what you need to do. So, but also use each other's strengths. Not everyone is good in front of camera, but there will be youth workers that are extremely, well versed and can present well. So again, it's just about using your energy, using your experience, using what you already know about young people, understanding what they like, what they don't like, and putting that online.
Yeah, I like the idea of you in your living room though, in like various hats, like literally. This question is similar, but important. I think, how do you keep it fun and fresh as well, so you're not doing the same thing every time?
The youth zones normally have a program, and that program is changed week upon week to suit and to meet young people's changing needs. So it's important that you accept young people's ideas and that you're always changing what you do, and potentially have a different program every week, something on which is new every day of the week. But again, continue to consult with young people on exactly what they want and how they want it to be delivered.
Thank you so much, Leon. It's been an absolute pleasure again, and hopefully I'll see you on the other side.
So I'm joined now with Lynn Byrne, who is OnSide's resident safeguarding expert. As safeguarding manager at OnSide, she's got a wealth of experience of safeguarding the context of youth work and youth zones as well. So Lynn, over to you. Please tell me the key things youth workers need to consider in terms of safeguarding online.
Hi Dev, thanks for speaking to me today. There are 4 main things to consider when it comes to online safeguarding. Number 1, usual protocol. Just because you're working in a digital context, it doesn't mean the rules don't apply. We just need to approach them differently. Number 2, professional boundaries. Professional boundaries can be affected when moving to a digital platform. The same standards still apply though, and maintaining professional distance is crucial. 3, parental permissions. We need to consider the new permissions that are required and how we're going to get them. Number 4, age restrictions and guidance on social media platforms. It's a minefield knowing who can be on different platforms. We'll work through the most popular platforms to make it clear which could be used for youth work.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the breakdown, Lynn. Now, before we start, I just want to remind everybody who's watching to get in touch with any questions that you might have for Lynn. Just let us know your name and obviously which youth zone as well. If we could start with the usual protocol when it comes to digital sessions, does normal protocol still apply?
Yes, it does. The same basic rules about planning your session apply. Create a session plan in advance as you would for your sessions in the youth zone, understanding the group you're engaging with and their needs. Planning your objectives for the sessions and how you're going to achieve them. Youth workers normally have pre and post briefings, so it's crucial to maintain these. Book an appointment with your line manager and other staff members attending the session beforehand to go through any issues or safeguarding concerns you may have. Try and evaluate each session to see what can be learnt for next time, and be vigilant of the behaviours of each young person. Be aware of things to know and any concerns you may have.
So does usual protocol need to be adapted for a digital setting?
Yes, though a lot of things are the same, there are many new things to consider. Make sure your space is suitable and confidential, particularly for mentoring sessions. Make sure your advice can't be heard by others in your home and no one else you live with would be able to identify the young person. If it's a live stream video, you'll need a second member of staff to act as a moderator with permission to remove or challenge comment that require it. And finally, being abreast of news headlines will give you the heads up on some of the issues or worries that may come up.
You guys have the respect agreement at OnSide. What does it mean, and does it still stand online?
The respect agreement is about young people respecting themselves, the building, the staff and each other. Young people should be reminded that this respect agreement still applies online. We need to keep standards as high as if we were working face to face. If you witness bad behaviour, you must challenge it in a positive way, just as you would in the youth zone. Be mindful of language being used and report anything that strikes you as inappropriate. You must set up online live sessions so there's a colleague on hand to monitor comments. It's a team job, just as normal.
If we could look at number 2, the professional boundaries point. Do professional boundaries change if you're at home?
No, absolutely not. If you wouldn't do it in the youth zone, then don't do it on camera. Be wary of sharing too much, it can put your career in jeopardy. Remember that infatuations can occur and you need to maintain a distance. Consistency of interaction is crucial. If you get too close and too personal, it can be hard to maintain the professional space needed. Young people must know where they stand to help them manage the expectations of your relationship to avoid them feeling disappointed. You should be friendly but not friends with young people and still need to report any concerns you may have about colleagues. The whistleblowing policy still applies digitally too.
What are some of the other do's and don'ts? What should youth workers be considering before sharing video footage of themselves, whether it's live streamed or pre-recorded?
You need to think about safeguarding principles such as having a neutral background, so remove that gin bottle, no identifying items, family pictures are best removed. It's possible to avoid filming in your bedroom for obvious reasons and not showing a view behind you that identifies where you live.
And professional boundaries can also include physical appearance and presentation as well. So how can youth workers consider that when doing some digital youth work?
You need to be presentable, as if you were in your youth zone. So your uniform must be worn. Maintain the language and professionalism that you'd normally have. Don't let language slip even though it's on a different medium.
Well, thank you very much, Lynn. I feel like I'm learning a lot now. I feel like I should have tidied up my background a little bit. I've got my guitar rack in the background showing off a little bit. If we could move on to your third category, parental permission. So what parental permission is needed for young people to take part in some of these online activities?
You need to think about image consent. So look back at the membership agreement and have conversations with parents or guardians.
Does OnSide have a platform that they prefer, and are there any that you think should be avoided?
There's a lot to remember, but it's important to note these down and build your sessions around these restrictions. Learning how to use platforms suitable for younger age group safety is important. For those under 12, I would recommend using Zoom by invitation using their parents' or guardian's email address. You will have heard concerns about Zoom, but they've installed enhanced safety features. We now feel the benefits of engaging with young people by Zoom outweigh potential risks. As long as you take care and respect the age restrictions, we endorse the use of the following. Zoom, as discussed before, used on parents' accounts. For juniors, we recommend FIFA and Minecraft. And for seniors, we recommend Instagram, YouTube, Facebook and Twitch. I don't encourage Snapchat. However, as you would normally in a youth zone, assess the suitability of individual young people attending Zoom sessions. It's important to provide support, but you may have ongoing concerns about some young people and deem them too high risk for some digital forums. This doesn't mean you should exclude them. You provide support in other ways and recommend digital services suitable for their needs, just as you would in a youth zone. There are experts across the youth zone network, so get in touch with me if you'd like me to link you up with someone for more support and guidance.
So whilst I've got you on, do you have any other little nuggets of wisdom or just sort of general advice for us?
Yes, I suggest using big established apps which are more monitored. Establish the rules at the beginning of the sessions to remind young people about the respect agreement. Have multiple youth workers on session so someone can moderate comments. Also advise young people to turn off their location settings, keep their passwords safe and recommend that their private settings are turned to high. Finally, I think it's worth saying that we know each youth zone does things slightly differently. I appreciate these rules make it harder for you to get on and deliver online youth work to young people who really need it. But once you've settled into a safe and effective platform, it will allow you to get on and provide the help young people need safely.
Lynn, you've been incredibly helpful. Thank you very much. There's a lot of very insightful information there. Let's take some questions.
If it was all right, I've got a couple questions here to get us started, and then we were going to start taking questions that people were going to start sending in.
Okay.
So we touched upon there when you gave us a little rundown. You mentioned about infatuations happen a lot, but what we didn't discuss was what to do if a young person does become infatuated with the youth worker.
First and foremost, you've got to be sensitive to that. You've obviously built up a relationship with that young person, and share that information with your line manager and your safeguarding lead, just so you're sharing that information beforehand. So you can work together to work out an approach to suit the young person, and obviously keep the boundaries in place at all times.
And we also talked a lot about backgrounds. In fact, you got me really paranoid about what's in the background. I didn't want to move it because then I was like, if I move it, it looks like I put it there on purpose. And then so I just left it. What do you do if you see something in the background when you're working virtually with a young person and it's something that worries you? So maybe it's a drunk parent or just something happening in the background that is cause for concern.
Again, it would depend on what sort of platform it was. If it was a Zoom one-to-one call, then you could approach the young person and ask them directly about it. Obviously, if it was more of a live session where other people would be, I'd write those concerns down, and then we'd have to contact that young person directly and see what support we can get them. Obviously, the youth workers would have built up relationships with the young people and will know details about their circumstances, and they'll know the best person who's got the best relationship with that young person to be able to speak to them and get any support in that they need.
You also talked about different platforms to interact with young people. I've got a question here that says, how can we best interact with young people on Snapchat or Facebook if they're under 13 years old?
Again, because of regulations with GDPR, anybody under the age of 13 can't give their consent for their data to be shared. So with those platforms, we'd have to be getting permission through the parents, just as we would if a young person turned up to a junior member turned up to a senior session. We'd very, very positively tell them where their sessions were. So although we want to engage with young people all the time, we want to make sure it's safe for them. So we're just explaining why that platform isn't suitable for them and what other platforms they could use to ensure their safety.
I guess Emma's question feeds quite nicely into that even though there are age restrictions on these social media platforms, we know that young people and people who are underage are on there anyway. So what advice would you give to youth workers about this?
Currently, the youth workers are working with OnSide, and we are producing a video. And I know I've seen some excellent work with other youth workers from different youth zones that are sharing advice for young people, because again, it's all about choices. So just giving them all the correct information so they can make those informed choices. And again, just explaining if they do face any difficulties or they're worried or concerned about anything, then they've got to share that with the youth workers and not keep that to themselves.
We talked about if we were concerned about something going on in the background when contacting a young person, but what do you do if you're worried about a young person's behaviour online?
Again, just make notes of those concerns. The youth workers know the young people really, really well, so they'll be able to spot any changes in behaviour. So if somebody is quite boisterous and normally they're quite quiet, there will be a reason for that. But again, just be mindful of what platform you're on. You don't want to be having those personal conversations when their peers and friends are there. So note down what you're concerned about, share that with your safeguarding lead and your line manager. And again, we can get in contact with that young person and just make sure that everything's okay and that they've got all the support they need.
You guys seem really across all these different platforms that young people use. I guess you obviously have to be. What about new platforms? There's all these new ones popping up left, right and centre. What advice do you have about if you're testing out a new one?
Again, just look at all the safety features, ask for help. I've had to learn very quickly over the last few weeks about the different apps. And like you said, there's different ones coming up. There's lots of different publicity in the news, but we're just all working together and sharing that information just to make sure that we're keeping young people safe and that we can give them all the information about the different apps that are out there.
This one might take a minute or two, but somebody would like to know your best and worst experience of working with young people digitally.
I think it's when it's live and people can get excited that they can forget that other people can see them and it's instant, and that once it's out there, then it's very difficult to get back. So it's just reminding young people that if they wouldn't do that in the youth zone, then don't do it online as well. I think there's like a bit of a false sense of security when you're just doing it in your bedroom and you've not got that interaction. Whereas if you had that interaction, you might not be as boisterous. And the best is just seeing all the young people engage with it and just take everything in the stride, really. They're just adapting to it so well and just being so positive and supporting each other. It's amazing.
That's so interesting you say about the mindset of just being at home and on the webcam, because when I've been doing my radio shows at home, I've been putting on my work pass and stuff just to make me feel like, right, I'm not at home, I'm not relaxing, I'm supposed to be doing a job.
Yeah.
Question here that says, what are some good places to signpost young people to for a bit of information and advice?
The NSPCC give really good advice and counselling if people are concerned. Obviously, first and foremost, to speak to their youth worker, because they've got really good professional contacts and they can signpost them to appropriate services and professionals that could support them.
Lynn, thank you so much for talking to us again. Thank you guys very much for sending in your questions. We'll be back in a couple of seconds.
I'm joined now by Ruth A.J. Wilson. She's a producer, director, editor of 20 years. She's worked on so many projects, from directing TV shows like X Factor and A Place in the Sun to working with massive YouTubers like Zoella, Tanya Burr and Pixie Woo. So let's see her in action.
How's it going?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. You've got a wealth of knowledge that we can draw from. And first of all, I want to talk about tech. So when it comes to technical equipment, what are some key things that youth workers really need to know?
So I think for me, the key thing to remember is that every single technical decision that you make, it's very much dependent on the type of content that you want to produce. So, think about, first of all, what's the style of the content? What platform are you putting it on? What activity are you going to be doing? And then just like really making sure that the technical decisions are compatible with the type of content you're trying to make.
Okay, so what are some really good technical decisions that youth workers should be considering when they're making their content?
So I think there's really three things to consider for me. The first is visuals. Obviously, we're making videos, so obviously visuals are quite important. The second is going to be audio. And the third is going the extra mile.
I don't know about going the extra mile, but let's break this down first. Let's talk about visuals in a bit more detail. What type of camera should we be using?
The average kind of modern household these days are absolutely full of devices. I know there's several in my house right now. So really, you've got to ask yourself, what's the best camera in my household? Is it my iPhone? Is it my partner's Samsung? Is it the family iPad? And, which device has got the best camera on it? So once you've kind of chosen and made the decision on the device and which camera you're going to use, it's really about like checking the settings to make sure you're capturing the best quality of footage. And actually, if you can go in and turn HD on, that's always a really good option too.
Yeah, high definition. So once we've decided on the device to use, how exactly should we be using it?
Okay, so first thing to consider, portrait or landscape. I'm sat in this is a landscape framing here. So if you want a wider frame, maybe you're doing a wide activity, you want to show more action in the background, brilliant, choose landscape. For me, portrait, which is more of the long kind of shape, is good for making that personal connection. Maybe it's a vlog, maybe it's more one-on-one chat where you're trying to make a connection and it's all about the speech. And then I think the next big decision is kind of like, are you going to prop up your device and keep it really, steady, or are you going to go handheld? Are you going to go vlog style? And I think that really depends on your content, but you just have to always kind of make a really strong reason for making that choice. You don't want to kind of go handheld and make people seasick unnecessarily if you're doing keepy uppies or football or something. And I think if you do choose handheld, it's always really nice to kind of switch between that view of yourself, but then also reverse the camera the other way and maybe show the viewer what you're seeing as well. So like show the action in the room as well as just like your head.
I feel like all of us now, whether our jobs before were behind or in front of the camera, we're all in front of the camera all the time. And I'm getting so used to seeing the backgrounds of people's houses. I'm really intrigued all the time as to what's in their house. I like your cheese plant there very much. It's beautiful. And what kind of lighting is best? Because I know that when you're talking about angles and things like that, that comes into play too.
So natural lighting, I love. I'm naturally lit at the moment. There's a huge big window right in front of me. So it's making sure that the light is there on my face, that the window's not behind me, because that will just silhouette me. Right. But also it's kind of being mindful that on a cloudy day that the sun, like when the clouds are moving fast, like the sun will be going in and out really quickly. So you might go light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, or, lots of shadow, and that's not good either. So it's just being really mindful of weather if you use natural light. But I do know that a lot of youth work goes on in the evenings too. So I think, we've got to consider non-natural lighting solutions too. And with that, I would say same rule applies, like always make sure like the main light source is on your face, but don't maybe necessarily make it too direct and too extreme. You can do a little industry trick for you. You could probably get some baking paper or tracing paper and just peg it over a lamp so you can soften that and just making sure it's not so harsh on your skin.
Great. Okay, so now let's look at audio in more detail because it's so important. What do we need to consider when it comes to capturing sound?
Okay, so, you don't have to spend loads of money. Your device, once you've selected your device, hopefully it has a decent built-in option. But to give yourself a fighting chance, I think it's about using it correctly. So in the industry, we describe it as being on mic, which basically just means you're as close to the microphone as possible. You don't need to be super close to it, but, if you're planning to film on the other side of the room, it's just not going to be at such good quality. So you might need to sort of buy something extra to help you if you're planning on doing that. And my suggestion would be that you can go on Amazon and for 20 quid, they've got like this. It's kind of like a USB smartphone plug-in microphone. And so, if sound is really important and you do want to be further away from the device, it might be worth making that investment.
Ruth, that's really great advice. Thank you so much. I'm sure it's going to help youth workers so much with the use of their technical equipment and using it to its full capacity. But any final tips on audio and visual?
You got to think about, what's going to accompany your post. So if it's going on YouTube, you might need a thumbnail, which is just the still image, that comes up on YouTube. And it's got to be really attention grabbing. You might have 2 seconds to catch someone's, attention. So make sure your thumbnail is really strong, really bold, really eye catching. And then also what copy do you put, which basically means what words do you put under your YouTube video. They've got to be attention grabbing. And I've been looking at some of the kind of youth work videos that you guys have been doing, and it's actually the stuff that's really attention grabbing to me was where you've challenged, or you've put in a challenge caption. So as Leon said earlier, it's probably about making it as interactive as possible, and be putting a question or a challenge in to really get that two-way communication.
And finally, you talked earlier about going that extra mile. What do you mean by that?
It could be where you play out a pre-packaged video, one that you've already made, and then you could switch to live halfway through, something like a Q&A, for example, so that people can then respond live to that package. And, I don't think you need to be an edit genius to edit your own content. I think there's plenty of options to play around with and experiment with. And we've all got a little bit of time right now. So, you could take time to learn a package. And for example, the iPhone or the MacBook gives you access to iMovie, which is great. There's loads of other apps too for the smartphone, including I think I know about Splice, Video Shop, InShot, and I think if you just look in the App Store, there's loads more. I think for me, the main benefits of the kind of pre-recorded packages that you can really add that humor and personality. So, you can do things like slow motion, you can speed stuff up, you can add text, which I think would really kind of, give that lightness and brightness and fun element for the young people.
Ruth, you've given us lots of technical advice there. Thank you so, so much. And now, on hand to give us some content ideas, it's Callum Knight. He is the founder of digital content agency BU Creations, having made online content for big brands and talent. Here he is in action.
Hello, my name's Callum. I'm the founder and director at BU Creations. What we do is we make social media content for big brands and businesses, and you will have just seen some examples of what we do. So Ruth's just giving you some great tips on sound, lighting, and going the extra mile when it comes to the technical things that you can consider when delivering your youth work online. But now I'm going to ask you to put on your creative hats as I go through some content ideas with you. So Leon explained that a range of young people with various different needs come through your virtual door. Some of them more vulnerable and needing more one-to-one support, but some are more supported, so we'll be turning to you for entertainment and escapism. With that last group in particular, you're competing for an audience at a time where there is lots of great content that young people could be interacting with. So here are some insider ideas that could really help your sessions stand out. So, number one, set an engaging topic or activity, which you're obviously already doing a really great job of this. You've proved that just because you're at home doesn't mean you can't deliver your normal variety of sessions, like music, cooking, or sports. Content that is based on clear topics or activities are a really good idea and almost guarantee you more traffic to your posts. So you can ask young people to head to an Insta Live or a Facebook stream where they can see you doing something like cook, make music, or do a workout. Like Ruth said, you could go the extra mile by pre-recording and editing something and putting it out as a live stream if you feel comfortable with that. It could really boost the quality of the audience experience, and it also leaves you free to interact with the young people via comments, for example. So, number two, create an opportunity for two-way engagement. So content that invites people to get involved and do something alongside you is always really successful. This might not be suitable for all the young people that you want to connect with who might need a more tailored and a more emotional moment with you. But for those who are at home, who are bored and need entertaining, this is a great idea. If, for example, you're doing a cooking or a music session, you could invite the young people onto a Zoom call or a Skype call at a scheduled time. You'd ask them before coming to watch a pre-recorded and edited video that you've made in advance. The video could show you making a meal with only 3 ingredients, or creating a verse of a song with random objects you find lying around in your house, or doing an exercise challenge. Whatever the activity it is you're doing, just within the video, make sure that you're asking them to come to the Zoom call with something prepared. This could be something like 3 ingredients, 3 random objects that could double up as instruments, or get their gym kit ready to go for a run. Once you're all together, you can ask the young people to talk through your video and ask them what they've brought to the session so they can do the same. Ask people to stay online while they're doing their cooking, their music writing, or their workout, and make sure you're talking with the group about what they're doing and see how others are getting on too. You can then all group back in 30 minutes or so and share your experiences and product, which of course could be a meal, a verse of a song, or a sweaty red face from your workout. So finally, hook them for the next time. Content that stands alone as a single episode or session is great, but it's even better when it draws your audience back in for the next time. So if you're doing cooking, it's collectively working towards a cookbook, or if you're doing gym stuff, it's setting challenges for them to work on in the next session. So that's it. There's a few suggestions that I hope will make your content stand out and keep your audience for longer. We'll now take some questions.
I've got some questions now from everyone watching. The first one is, what are do's and don'ts for home lighting? I know this is so important. I'll come to you first, Ruth.
Okay, yeah, cool. Do's and don'ts for home lighting. So I would say definitely don't film in a room that's too dark, because if it's too dark, your device may go grainy, and the quality of that footage, you get this kind of grain effect. And maybe it's because I've been doing it for 20 years, but I think it looks awful.
I feel like mine's not great currently, sorry.
No, yours is good. Yours isn't grainy. But, you know, if you're filming at like 10 o'clock at night and maybe you only have like 1 tungsten light bulb, like, yeah, just be careful of that. You kind of want to get, if you're filming at night, a do is get as much light into that room as possible. And you kind of want it where the camera is pointing towards you. But again, at the same time, I think I've sort of touched on it on my video. You know, don't put a spotlight on yourself either. There's things you can do, like shine it off a wall. And that's something that I do in the industry with a panel light quite often. If I don't have time to do a good lighting setup, I will literally just shine a bright light off a white wall, and that will bounce back. So there's little things you can do.
Okay, good advice for all of us, to be honest. Callum, you're used to producing attention-grabbing content, and this question is, what's the best way to get young people to come back for the next session?
I think that the best way is to make the content of it as interactive and as engaging as possible to start with. Obviously, if they're having fun, they're going to come back anyway. But having a purpose and an end goal within the content itself will mean they're more likely to come back anyway if they've got something to work towards. It's like like if you're watching a series on Netflix, for example, and
I know it.
Yeah, and the story isn't you don't know the end of the story yet. You're going to go back and watch all the episodes until it's finished. It's quite simple like that. So yeah, obviously make the sessions as fun and engaging as possible to start with, but setting goals, setting end goals or things they can work on session is really important as well.
I've got a question from Stephen that you might both have different answers for. So I'll come to you first, Ruth, and ask you as well, Callum. What editing package would you recommend for a beginner?
Okay, so it's tricky because I use the Adobe Suite, but I've heard that other people have really recommended Splice recently, and I think it's Filmagora, Filmagora, something like that. Filmago, and Splice I've heard are really good.
Callum, are they what you'd use as well?
Yeah, if you're a Mac user, iMovie is really good. It's really simple. It's what I first started editing on when I first got into video editing. It's really straightforward. If you're a Windows user, think they have something called like it's a window media player or something you can do very basic editing on. And yeah, like Ruth said in her interview bit, there's loads of apps on the Apple on App Store that you can use. Yeah, loads, and they're free as well. You can download them for free. So
yeah,
and then listen from. Oh, sorry, you carry on.
I was just going to say, and I think as Callum says, they're free. Just go wild and go for one that feels good for you and that you can work with.
Yeah, I guess you can have a little play, can't you? Have a practice and then work out what feels intuitive. And actually, this leads on quite well from it. This is from Charlie at the Wigan Youth Zone. Says, once you've completed and you've edited, how do I then post it live? I guess this depends on which platform you're posting on. But Ruth, what would be your answer to that?
Yeah, that's not a quick question, a quick answer really, because it depends if you've done it on your laptop, on your iPad, or on a mobile phone device, whether you've shot it on a little camera on a memory card and you've taken it off. So it really depends. It depends how you've created it, to be honest. So I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay, it depends on what platform you're going to put it on as well. If you're doing it as part of a live stream, that platform will have its own ways to upload stuff. If you're just doing it natively on social media or YouTube or something like that, then they tend to be quite straightforward because it's obviously meant for everyone. But yeah, it depends on the platform you're using as well.
Yeah, it's probably worth looking into the specific instructions for that platform that you've decided to use. This is probably quite a good question for you, Callum, actually. Should we make a script or a storyboard, or can it be pretty informal? That's from Barnabas.
It completely depends on the person. Like you've probably seen from mine, I had bullet points, but I would go off script on occasion, just so it seems more natural. The more natural it is, the more engaging it will be. It's simple. So you could have made a really good script with really good engaging content in it, but if you're like reading it like a robot, pointless. So as long as as much conversation as possible. If you're confident at that, so I've done content before for clients and not even bothered with the script. I've just known the content and kind of blagged it really. I would suggest making as many notes as possible, just so you're across the content, and then kind of just do what comes naturally to you.
I've got a question from Zara, who asks, with so many more people interacting online, what is the biggest mistake that Ruth has noticed people making in the technical sphere?
I mean, I guess a mistake. I think it used to be with broadcasting, everything was so perfect on television. Like, everything's sort of edited by professionals and so perfect. But I think now we very much got used to things being imperfect. And actually, I think there is something beautiful about that imperfection. And, if you do make a mistake, just owning it as well, just like, whoops, the webcam's not on, or, and just keeping it light. I mean, I'm trying to think what thing's really great on me. I think if I can't see someone clearly, so it is lighting again. And I think if you can't hear someone as well, if you can't see someone and you can't hear someone, those are the two biggest mistakes you can make. Everything else goes, I think.
This is quite, it's kind of sometimes a legal question. I guess it depends on the specifics of different platforms. But Aidan has asked, can I put music in videos? You probably both know what the rights issues are around music. Callum, what would you say?
Yeah, like you said, it's dependent on the platform, but there's loads of royalty-free music sites that you can download from. Some do have some subscriptions, but even if like for example, if you go on YouTube and you type in royalty-free background music and then pick a genre, there's loads that you can kind of download directly from YouTube. They have their own music library as well, that you can use. Yeah, it does depend on the platform. I know Instagram, for example, you can use music from like the charts or whatever, but things like I know Facebook had a problem with it. I'm not sure if it still does, but I would just try and stay clear of copyrighted music as best you can.
Okay, so that's like commercial music.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say that you can Google the rules of each platform. So each platform, like one platform might allow you 7 seconds of commercial music, for example. So just check each platform and Google the rules before you do it. If you're going commercial, that is. You got to be careful with commercial music.
Yeah, it can cost a lot. And just one final question. This comes in from Leah, who's asked, what kit should we be investing in? And you both mentioned you don't need loads of kit or to spend loads of money on kit. But Ruth, what would you say is essential?
I would say master what you've got. If you think it's good enough. If you think it's not good enough, then you're looking for a kit that, again, it comes back to audio and video, but you're looking for a camera with a good resolution of filming. So if it's got high definition, have a look at the quality of the video settings, and that's what you're looking for. So I would say most kit these days, anything that's newish, like it's all good enough right now. Like, yeah, I don't think you need to spend too much.
Ruth, Callum, thank you so much for joining us and for all your wise words.
So you got your ideas, you got your technical sorted. This section is going to look at how to make your session as entertaining as possible for the audience. We're going to focus on how to produce and present. Now, remember, if any questions spring to mind during this, just send them over with your name and youth zone, and we'll hopefully answer them in the Q&A. Right, so Vic, when I say producing, what does that mean to you?
Basically, it just means creating content, doesn't it? And planning on how you want to deliver that to an audience by whatever medium it is, whether it's TV or radio or online. And in terms of production, there's 4 main things that I usually consider. So we've got, what is the key message that you want to convey? Who are you delivering that message to? Who is your target audience? How do you want that content or the subject to look and sound and feel? And then finally, it's important always to consider your logistics. What are your mechanics? What are the practicalities of making that happen?
What about if you're not a super organised person? I'm asking for a friend. If you're not, very good at, like typing things up and sticking to a schedule and that kind of thing. Does it mean you're not cut out for producing?
No, it doesn't mean you're not cut out for producing. Everyone produces in different ways. I've worked with so many producers who have different techniques. Some people are very verbal. Some people like to write things out and have a plan that they then share amongst everyone who's doing it. If you're doing a video that is very active and you're going to be going through drills, or you're going to be teaching kickboxing or whatever activity it is, you would probably, in the same way that you'd do a class, plan it out and then take everyone through the plan. However, if you're connecting with a young person who needs to talk to you on a one-to-one level, who needs to feel comforted by you, then maybe it's actually about being more verbal and talking it through on your own and seeing how you think that would make you feel if you were to hear that back. So recording it and then listening back or watching it back, and you can then gauge the impact, because as we keep saying, it's all about the target audience. How is that going to affect them? How are they going to perceive it? And how are they going to receive it?
There's something I used to do as a little kid. I didn't realise this is what I was doing, but I still do it as an adult now, which is to watch stuff on telly or listen to things and then think about how I would have done it differently.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought the crystal maze always really annoyed me. At the end when they grab all the fans. And
you always think you could do it better, don't you? You're I would have got tons.
That format always really annoyed me. I was like, no, I would tweak that slightly, but I didn't realise it at the time, but that was sort of producing. It was, okay, here's my idea, here's how I would do it, here's the little tweaks that I would make.
Yeah, definitely. I think watching all sorts of content, whether it's on TV or whether it's online, and there's tons of platforms online, there's so many people presenting content on Instagram at the moment, on lives, as well as your YouTube platforms. Have a little look at what they're doing, how they've framed things, how they have cut things together, how they have been in front of the camera. It's all stuff we're all learning all the time. I mean, the whole of our industry is shifting at the moment, so there's always something that can be learned from what others are doing.
Yeah, and I suppose now more than ever, we've got plenty of time on our hands to get really good at it as well.
Got time. I think also, and this is something that we do on radio a lot. And we do a lot when we're doing celebrity interviews, because if you think of any celebrity, they've got tons of fans. You want to give the fans what they want. So when it comes to producing content, we ask the fans, what is it that you want to see from your favourite celebrity? If we've got Little Mix coming in, we know they have this huge fan base. Ask the mixers, what is it you want? So this actually applies to making content for your youth zones as well. Why don't you ask them what it is that they're looking for, what they could do with from you? It's the same as a fan base. They might give you some good ideas for things that you could produce.
All right, well, there's some very solid tips in there. Thanks very much, Vic. Let's talk about presenting, because there's a lot of things you need to consider with presenting. This is like one of 3 things I think I know anything about, and have like a few things to say on it. I think my top tip, well, there's a couple. My top tip, presenting. First thing, you got to think about who it is you're trying to connect with. For example, when we did the OnSide Awards, we knew that we were going to have youth workers in there, we were going to have parents, we were going to have CEOs. We wanted to deliver it in a way that wasn't going to make anybody feel alienated or, oh, they're not really speaking to me. When you're trying to find your voice and how to deliver something, I always use the example of I talk to my friends differently to how I talk to their parents. I'm not completely changing my whole persona or becoming a different person. I'm just slightly tweaking my language and some of my references depending on who I'm speaking to.
Yeah, you're being mindful. We had Prince Harry in the room. Can you still call him Prince Harry? Yeah, he's still Prince Harry.
Hazza.
Yeah, so you've got exactly. Did you call him Hazza?
I didn't.
I think you did. You know.
Prince Harry.
I don't know.
So I think I curtsied.
Kids as young as 8 all the way up to CEOs and Prince Harry. You do kind of adjust the way you're talking and be mindful of the way that they're hearing it.
Yeah, and this is a weird thing to say to people, because it's almost the second you say it, you start becoming self-conscious of what you're doing and you move further away from it. So I always say, try and be as natural and conversational as possible when presenting. I mean, we always do it, Vic. If we get a bit lazy, we slip into presenter mode before you know it. And just that cadence, it just washes over people and it stops, it stops like meaning anything. So try to be natural and conversational, just like you're talking to your friends. Again, it's like one of those things you say to people and then all of a sudden you get inside your head a little bit and think, oh, what am I? Who am I? Who am I? You're going to have a full-on existential crisis.
It's easier said than done, and sometimes it's about not thinking about it, not overthinking it, but you're right, trying to be yourself, talking as though you're talking to another person. I think probably for a lot of the youth workers who are watching now, you'll be great at it because you're used to working with young people and you're used to being so personable and being someone that they can chat to about anything. It gets harder when you're talking alone in a room just to a camera. But actually, I find that if you imagine you're talking to that person that you're used to talking to so naturally, then sometimes it helps the lilt of your voice. You relax into it, don't you?
You also want to, again, this is one of those things you're going to say, it's going to get in your head, but try and think of it and then put it to the back of your mind. Just physically, how you look, like what you're doing with your body, you don't want to be closed off. I talk with my hands anyway, but you don't want to be doing too much kind of presenter hands. Somewhere in the middle that feels comfortable with. Just be mindful of, can they see your face? Are you covering your mouth or doing anything weird with your hands?
Yeah, it's funny because actually I love it when people talk with their hands. To me, it's a really nice characteristic to have. However, when you're talking to a camera, all of a sudden that is amplified, and even more so when you're talking to one of these cameras on your computer, because look how big my hand gets. Look at that.
It's like a fisheye lens.
It's massive, isn't it? So I think you do have to kind of take it out of frame a little bit. You're right. I think that sitting on quite a straight back seat is helpful. It stops you hunching over. It keeps you open and welcoming. And if you do have any mannerisms that don't work so well on camera, you'll work it out when you watch yourself back, and it's the worst thing to do. It's excruciating.
The absolute worst.
But it is helpful.
Yeah, I don't know any presenter I've ever worked with or ever met who's ever watched or listened back to something they've done and thought, that was amazing, that was brilliant, I absolutely smashed that. You're always going to be overly critical of things that you do. In radio, we do things called snoop sessions sometimes, which is to just listen to the audio links without any music or anything. And what you realise quite quickly is some of the bad habits that you have. So me listening back to interviews that I've done and shows that I've done, I realise my ums and ahs in between when I'm like thinking. I don't need to do that. I don't need to go in between me thinking about something. When I'm interviewing somebody, I realised I did it quite a lot when I've done my Will Smith interview, which is to, as he's talking, I want him to know that I'm engaged and I'm listening. So I do this quite a lot. Yeah. And that works in the room, but as audio, when you listen back to it afterwards, all you can hear is me going all over the entire interview. Listening back, I realised, I can still have that same effect by just maintaining eye contact with him and nodding, and then that way it doesn't sound like I haven't got anything to say and I'm just over the whole interview. It was excruciating, but the only way I realised that is to listen back to stuff that I've done, be overly critical of it, and then try and make adjustments for moving forward.
You know what's funny though? So I used to do a lot of ums and ahs and hms as well. So I started to just nod because I was on radio, and then went to TV. And I remember someone tweeting a comment, Vic Hope is like the Churchill dog, she won't stop nodding. It's like, because that's what I know from radio. So know your medium. It changes, it shifts. Sometimes the ums are better, sometimes the nods are better. But in the same way that listening to yourself back was helpful for knowing that you ummed and ahed, you might also find that you have certain words that you use a lot of. I say sort of a lot. I know a lot of us say kinda, if you know what I mean. So you'll find out what your little quirks are, and they're not a bad thing. Like, don't feel bad, don't be hard on yourself, but maybe you'll just be a bit mindful to, take a couple of them out.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I think we've wanged on quite enough. Hopefully there's something useful in there to any aspiring presenters. Let's take some questions.
We're going to take questions now and kind of pose them to each other.
Yeah, I guess. Get the ball rolling. Yeah,
let's do that. Okay, we've got a question already. This is from Rachel from the Wigan Youth Zone. Hi, Rachel. Says, what do you think that young people value in terms of production and presentation when they're watching online content?
I think it's all about making those connections, isn't it? And like I remember, for example, my younger nephew, who got me into watching people who stream computer games. And at first, him telling me the concept of it, I thought it sounded so stupid. I was like, why would I watch somebody else play a computer game? And then I sat down and watched it and was like, oh, actually, it's really entertaining because it's somebody playing at a high level and you're learning as you're watching them, and it's actually stuff you can apply to yourself. So I think that has to be the most important thing when you're either presenting something or coming up with that idea, is thinking about how you're going to connect with the person it's intended for.
Yeah, I completely agree. I remember the first time I heard about people watching people playing games online, I was like, what are you talking about? No way. But it is entertaining. I guess it just completely depends on the young person, and it depends on the situation that they're in. There'll be some young people out there who care deeply about the production values. I've got massive respect for that. But for a lot of others, it will just be feeling like you can connect immediately and feeling like the person on the other side of it is relatable and they're being honest with you. I think that, that's why so many online content creators do so well. The YouTubers who do well, or the Instagrammers who do well, they're usually the ones who are most authentic. But you have that relationship already through your youth zones with your young people. So I think in this situation, it's about maintaining what you had before and taking it online.
Yeah, I agree. Well, what about some of the, there's a question here, the practicalities of filming yourself and, say, overcoming nerves. You still get nervous when you do jobs and stuff?
Mate, do you? I don't think there's ever going to be a time when that stops, is there?
Yeah, all the time. I think nerves is good because nerves means that you care. Nerves means you want to get this right and you want it to be good.
I completely agree. And it also means that you're going a bit outside of your comfort zone, which you're always going to be doing that. That's just life, isn't it? So personally, when I get nervous, maybe this is something that you already know, but breathing is really important. And taking really long, deep breaths, like 4 in, hold it for 4, 4 out, hold it for 4. It's very practical. I find that it works very well. I find that having a little chat to myself first before doing some new content that maybe I've not, done before. It's not necessarily a practice, but it's more just warming up my voice and just getting used to chatting as myself, and my voice kind of it becomes a little bit more natural off the back of having talked just for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any tips?
I think, just to touch on what we said before about nerves being good, I think there's a massive difference between good and bad nerves. If you're, nervous because you're dreading something, that's completely different to being nervous because you want to get something right, you want to nail it.
Yeah.
Like, we can go out and present at the Royal Albert Hall, and I would have got a little bit nervous to do that, but I'm more nervous about, say, going to a new gym for the first time. It's because to touch on what you said, the comfort zone thing. I'm walking into this brand new environment and there's a little clique of friends over there and they all know each other. And, so I think nerves is definitely good. The breathing thing is very big, but I also think if you're starting something new, if it's not something you're good at, like not being hard on yourself to go, this is going to be a bit of a journey. You're not going to be amazing overnight, or regardless of how much natural talent you have at anything, you're going to have to spend time refining it and getting better. That's why I find it hard to learn new skills now, because I want to be so good and amazing straight away, but that's not really how it works. You've got to keep practicing at things and getting better.
Yeah, you're right. There was a time when I was much more open to learning and used to the process, and then you get to a point where it's actually scarier to do something from the beginning again, but it's also exhilarating and it's exciting, and we're all constantly learning about these new platforms. Like, I'd never heard of Zoom before the lockdown. And we're just kind of getting to grips with it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I've got a question here saying, does it matter if you get something wrong when you're presenting live? What advice would you give?
You got to own that. You got to own it. If you get I learned something really interesting from my friend Alice, who I do my radio show with. I was taught an old-fashioned way of presenting, which is to try and hold things together regardless of what's happening. So if there's an elephant in the room, you have to do your best to kind of dance around it. Whereas when I started working with Alice, she'd be like, there's an elephant over there. And I thought, oh, are you just allowed to say that? Are you just allowed to say, oh, sorry, guys, we're having some technical issues right now. I can't hear anything that's going on right now, so I'm just going to wing it for a little bit, talk amongst yourself. I didn't know it was okay to just address and say things. And I found in my experience, by doing that, it makes you seem a lot more human. People connect to you a lot better. And actually, by owning a potentially embarrassing situation, the outcome, I feel, is a lot better. And mistakes reiterate the fact that it's live and it's in the moment. I think that's what people like about live radio and live telly, is that things can go a little bit wrong.
Oh, live is the best. It's so exciting. And in the situation that I'm sure a lot of you watching will be in, it is live because it is life. That's what you're there for. That's what you're helping with. That's what you're so indispensable for. And if the wheels come off, I always say it's not a case of disaster. It just means it's freewheeling now. It's just fun. It's exciting. This is a really good question actually from Carly in Bolton. He says, how do you keep conversations going and the person that you're interviewing not to give closed answers, which happens all the time. Sometimes trying to stick too closely to a script can throw you off if the answers are more closed than you were expecting. So I think being mindful and open to going off script, being ready for that, or maybe even giving yourself more than you need to talk about in a video or to talk to them in the video will help you to open those answers up and to just keep it moving.
I'm gonna do a massive clang right now and
go on then. I'll pick up the floor.
So I interviewed Samuel L. Jackson once, right? And it was one of those junkets.
1 second, let me
just pick out.
Go on then.
It was one of those press junkets where you only get 10 minutes with them, and then you have to leave, and then the next person comes in to interview him. And he didn't seem like he was really in the mood to be interviewed. And I sat down, I asked him a couple of questions. He was eating a sandwich and giving me like one-word answers. I was like, none of this is going to work. So like you said about not being like sticking to a script, I thought, well, I've done tons of research. I feel like I'm prepared for this. So one of the things I mentioned was I went off script and went, I thought it was like really fascinating when I did my research. You haven't stopped working since the first film you did. You've done at least 2 films a year ever since then. And he kind of stopped and went, I mentioned a few of them, and basically what I'm trying to say is I pandered, is what I did. I pandered to what I thought I thought, what can I bring up that he would enjoy talking about? So often, I guess, when you get those closed answers, maybe you're starting off down an avenue that person isn't necessarily comfortable talking about, or maybe they talk about it all the time. So yeah, I think kind of pandering so I can bring it back to where I want. But I've interviewed plenty of people who I felt were being a little bit difficult, and you just had to kind of persevere and sort of melt them a little bit.
Warm them up a little bit. Thank you all so much for your questions as
Thanks,
well.
guys.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
So that's it.
What a journey. I actually feel like we learned something. I feel clever now.
Actually did, yeah. Thank you to all of our amazing industry experts who've taken part in this webinar.
We had Leon Crosby, who's head of operations at Blackburn Youth Zone. He was talking about how to engage with young people online, focusing on you as a youth worker and being visible, you making a young person feel visible and valued, and also your role facilitating peer interaction between young people.
And then we had the lovely Lynn talk to us about safeguarding in a digital setting, and she broke down how to maintain the usual protocol and professional boundaries in an online setting, making sure as well that you get the right parental permissions for your online sessions, and finally about the age restrictions for the various platforms you might be using.
From there, we also had our industry experts, Ruth and Callum, who were talking about technical equipment and content ideas. They gave us really, really good pointers about focusing on lighting, sound, and going the extra mile to make sure that your content really stands out.
And finally, you hear from us, giving you our pearls of wisdom on producing and presenting. It's safe to say you guys are already doing a great job of delivering youth work online. So before you go, it does feel right to showcase some of the great stuff that you're already doing.
Yes, absolutely. Here are some examples of OnSide youth workers delivering Youth Zone at home sessions. Enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us for this OnSide webinar. See you later. Bye.